Welcome to the Baseball Insiders Prospect Edition. I am Adam Weinrib, joined, as I am every Tuesday, by Fansided's prospect guru, Eric Cole, prospect guy, if you believe the Chiron. I'm back from a week off. I got sun, I got tan, hold for applause, hold for laughter, rejoin show. And we are just a couple of days away from September 1st, which means it is time for September call-up decisions, which, given the scope of rosters these days, have become quite boring in recent years. You only get to add 2 players instead of having the ability to max out your entire 40-man roster if you felt like it. So you used to see a wave of prospects. Now you usually see bullpen reinforcements. But that doesn't mean there aren't a couple of big names who have a shot at joining big league rosters. And Eric is going to help me break them down, plus talk through the risers and fallers of the past week of action, which I missed. Eric, how goes it?
It goes well. I'm glad you got to enjoy yourself on vacation and get a quote-unquote tan based on what I'm looking at here. But yeah, no, this is a fun time of year because you're right. The September call-ups, the tenor of them has changed over the years. I don't necessarily miss the days when teams called up like 8 bullpen arms and then every game was a bullpen game in September. It was kind of obnoxious. Games became really unwatchable. You kind of want to see more moves happen, and there's like limitations on rosters. It's not only just 2 more guys, but you can only have 14 pitchers. So it kind of puts these like not artificial constraints, but just like these constraints that make it where there's only certain types of moves that are realistically going to be made at any given moment. But that said, again, because this is within the window now where you can call up somebody and they're going to still probably retain rookie eligibility, which matters a lot with the prospect promotion incentives, et cetera, and service time and all that stuff. We could still see names getting called up. Now, how many? I'm not so sure about that. But I do think that there's some top names in contention for September call-ups, and it'll be really interesting to see kind of what some of these teams do.
Yeah, you mentioned the PPI stuff, and now there is genuine reason to keep these prospects down rather than just, team stinginess always factors in, but now the miserly teams have more of an incentive to wait till next year than they usually did. And Bubba Chandler's up now, and, I guess he's a long reliever for the time being. I missed that while I was gone, and I'm glad that the Pirates have finally landed on the position that works for Bubba Chandler. They've unlocked him. He's a 6th inning reliever. That makes a lot of sense. But we have a few big names to talk about. I'm sure everyone's going to weigh into the comments. We appreciate everyone joining us. Again, noon Eastern every Tuesday for the Insiders Prospect Show. Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern for the Baseball Insiders with Robert Murray. Until we get closer to the playoff push, then we speed that schedule back up and start packing it with more shows. Subscribe to the Moonshot if you have not, our weekly baseball email newsletter where the Fansided MLB team, including Robert Murray, Eric Cole, myself, break down on the biggest stories in the big leagues with humor, insight, and behind-the-scenes info. All that and more on the Baseball Insiders feed on fansided.com. That's fansided.com/baseball-insiders. And join us in the Discord if you want to bother us with questions. Just hit that join button below, become a member of the Baseball Insiders, and we'll see you in there. Plenty of names we want to get to, and I know that people are going to be bringing some. I already see some Jonah Tong love in the comments. But before we get to the names that we've got our eye on and maybe some pie-in-the-sky options that we don't think are realistic but would be fun, you brought a Yankee up, so I got to start there. And I will caution everyone that the Yankees roster situation is quite complex. When you're talking about teams that don't have a lot of capacity to bring on high upside talent, the Yankees are one of them because they've got plenty of injured relievers returning, which, again, is everyone's favorite way to use expanded roster spots, injured guys who are already on the team. Theoretically, they've got Austin Slater, who they acquired at the deadline as a platoon bat. He played 2 games and then hurt his hamstring, and he comes back in September. So you're going to have to use a roster spot on him or chuck him because is that a playoff roster spot guy? Is that a guy you really care about? But if you want him back, you got to use a roster spot on him. You got Paul Blackburn you can get rid of when you're welcoming back Ryan Yarbrough. Are you going to welcome back Jonathan Loaisiga? Doesn't seem like it because that guy's got another elbow injury. So maybe it's a little easier than we thought, but they've got so many injured arms. They've got to welcome back. You have to assume, okay, they'll use these 2 spots on Slater and maybe bringing Yerry De Los Santos back. But you brought up Spencer Jones, who just hit a couple more home runs, maybe finally shaking off those back spasms, tied for the minor league lead. And who doesn't love the upside? Finally unlocked at AAA this year. I'm throwing my cold water on it just because I do think the Yankees are among the teams that are most likely to use those spots boringly, but make the case for Spencer Jones in terms of an upside play.
I mean, it's pretty simple for me. The Yankees are spiraling right now, and the lack of offense is a reason why they often lose games. You still have Aaron Judge, who's great. Every other contributor on that team, it comes and goes, right? And you've suffered through that more than just about anybody. So if your plan for your September call-ups is Austin Slater and some reliever that's probably never going to give you more than a 4 ERA for the month of September, if you don't make the playoffs, you deserve what you get. Whereas in Jones, look, this is not a perfect player, right? He's been very good this year. He still strikes out a lot. So if the Yankees want to hang their hat on, look, we just think he's going to strike out too much in the big leagues, but if we call him up right now, I could kind of respect it. But the reality is that there's no bigger upside play that they could make right now to make a real push and help this offense out. He's played really well at AAA. The numbers have been kind of insane. Again, he did have those back issues. How serious those are, it'd be good luck finding information about minor league injuries that you can actually trust. Because if teams are going to lie or hide information about injuries, it's going to be on minor league guys every time. So again, maybe we find something out there, but for me, the calculus is pretty simple. He's been around for a while. He's played really well all year at his entire time at AAA. Power, speed, size, again, just like kind of a middle of the order threat that the Yankees could really use right now to kind of cover up, especially if they have, pit starters that don't go quite as long, or welcome back some of these injured relievers that give up leads late because they've been out for so long. It kind of just depends on how brave the Yankees choose to be with the guys that they're willing to designate for assignment. If they have some guys on their 40-man roster that they think they can sneak through waivers and outright to the minor leagues, then maybe they can be a little bit more creative. But if they don't think that'll happen, which is possible, I mean, again, it just kind of depends on the names if they think that they'll get claimed. I really like their chance. I really like Spencer Jones as a call option. Whether or not they actually do it, we'll see.
Yeah, I like him as a theoretical call-up option more than one in reality. But you are right that there's leakiness everywhere across this Yankees roster, and people tend to say the offense isn't the problem. And maybe not the primary problem, but it's certainly a problem. It shut down over the weekend against Boston. And how do you beat teams who can throw Garrett Crochet at you? You get a guy who can crush one home run and change the game. And that's Spencer Jones. So a lot going wrong in Yankee land, but I would certainly endorse it. I endorsed it when Judge went down. Of course, that coincided with the back spasms, and then we got Austin Slater for 6 seconds. But it would be the most exciting thing for them to do. Now, in terms of realism, there are several more names who I think probably have a more realistic shot at getting a call-up, one of whom has been mentioned in the comments already. Well, two of whom, I would say. Jonah Tong is another good one. But Payton Tolle is the one that obviously, I think of most often in terms of the Red Sox have already made several creative decisions in recent days, grabbing Nate Lowe after getting DFA'd explicably, but also inexplicably by the Nationals. And then they call up Justinson Garcia. So Tolle feels like he's on the right track to play either there's a fifth starter spot open. They had a bullpen game yesterday. It could be Kyle Harrison, could be Tolle, or he could be a playoff bullpen guy. He makes all the sense in the world for me. Spencer Jones for Skeens, of course, no longer in consideration, I would say, but maybe next year. We'll have to keep an eye out for that. But so Tolle was on my list, but any other names come to mind immediately when you think of, okay, impact September call-ups, but this actually feels realistic?
Yeah, Tong's been a name that's gotten a lot more. Dog's just causing havoc. He's just going wild, causing havoc.
Crash out. Dog crashing out because
he's a big Jonah Tong fan, or really doesn't like it. Unclear. I like Tong as a realistic option, if for no other reason. There's been so many whispers about him getting called up and this late season push that the Mets have been really excited about him. I didn't put him on my list mainly just because there's been so much chatter about him. It kind of felt redundant. I obviously had Spencer Jones, but two names in particular that come to mind. Payton Tolle is one of them, and also Andrew Painter. I'm a little surprised that Painter hasn't made his way back to the big leagues before now. But the problem is the command hasn't been there. He'll have 3 good starts, then 2 really bad ones, 2 really good ones, 3 bad ones. He's kind of in the middle of a stretch where he's not been pitching particularly well right now. But in the Phillies' position, they just lost Zach Wheeler. They traded away Mick Abel at the trade deadline. All of a sudden, this starting pitching depth that we thought they had isn't really present. When you lose a Cy Young contender, as it turns out, it's a pretty big deal. And thoracic outlet syndrome is a big deal in terms. Even if you have the surgery, a lot of those guys never come back the same. And in which case, if you have a guy like Painter, who if the underlying numbers look good with Painter, and you like the spin, you like what his stuff looks like, you probably have to give him a shot now because this isn't like a hot shot prep arm anymore. He's missed a lot of time, and you have to kind of figure out what you have with him. Before the season, everyone's like, "Oh yeah, he's going to be back. We're going to have him back this season, and he's going to show something for us and be an important part of our future." But we haven't seen him called up yet. Right now, it seems like it makes no sense to call him up now. And I agree with you and Tolle. I just think that he's pitched so well this year, kind of pitched himself into this conversation that we never would have thought he was going to be. And that fastball is just so hard to pick up out of his hand. And I think that's the sort of thing that plays in the major leagues. It's not just a guy who like throws hard or like has like a slider that has a big spin rate. He just like has like this deception and extension that is incredibly difficult to pick up. And I think that he'd be an asset for the Red Sox. So again, this is another team that's like trying to push for one of those final playoff spots. And if you have a guy like Tolle sitting in your minor leagues when the end of September comes and you lose by half a game, you deserve what you get.
Yeah, and how permanent is that deception advantage? Like, we don't know, and we don't need to care, because right now he's got a trick in his playbook that seems like it's going to play really well down the stretch run and into October. And who cares if people figure it out by next year and he has to adjust again? He definitely has an unreplicable skill that can help the Red Sox down the stretch. And yeah, Andrew Painter makes sense to me too, because it's the classic situation of Taijuan Walker being, I accidentally became really important at work and it's ruining my life. Like, he doesn't want to be in the position he's in, but he is, and the Phillies could absolve that. Now, again, a good comment, and we touched on this a little bit earlier, just mentioning, the PPI stuff and the timeline at play here as we get into September. RG asking if starting the clock on these guys will keep anybody down. Eric, you made it clear that if you're a team that is truly fighting tooth and nail for a playoff spot, that can't be a concern of yours right now, but it probably will be in some aspects.
In some ways, yes. Now, it just comes down to like how certain you are they would be in Rookie of the Year contention if they started the season next season on the opening day roster, right? But the biggest consideration is for hitters specifically, and whether or not they can get to 120 play appearances or 45 days of service time. Obviously, if you call them up now, they're not going to get to 45 days of service time because there's not that many days left in the season. Or if you call them up on September 1st. The play appearances can kind of depend on how many games you play and all this other stuff, and how close you can get to that. I just don't think that is going to matter all that much per se, because you're not starting the service clock in the same way. You accumulate service time, but it's not going to be in a way that we're like, if you were going to call them up at the beginning of the year anyway. If you think that you just need them now and maybe you'd prefer to hold them down next year, then it's a consideration. But for me, if like you were like going to call them up on opening day next year anyway, you should probably call them up now if you need them.
Yeah, and I do think there are a few names in that. The people in the bucket we just talked about sort of all fall into that hole of like, hey, if they're in your plans for opening day 2026, then why are they not in your plans now? Tolle, Painter, even some wild cards who like Bryce Eldridge, Kevin McGonigle. Like, I don't know how realistic those folks are. And Eldridge might be more of a showcase than anything else, but I do think out of all the teams that are out of the playoff race, are the Giants and Eldridge maybe the most likely match to sort of just give us a September show?
I mean, look, Posey's the kind of president of baseball operations that might be willing to like, look, I just think he's good enough, so we're going to call him up and see what the kid's made of. Look, I love the folks at Baseball America, but the idea of like two prep bats that are just so close to when they were drafted in this little experience getting called up in September, I have a tough time believing it. And I love McGonigle and I love Eldridge. But like, if these were college bats, this would be a completely different conversation. These are still kids that are still figuring things out. You don't like McGonigle's been at Double-A all year. You're going to call him up and then see if he can hit, some of the better pitchers in baseball. I'm a little bit skeptical. I think you could. Is it possible? Yes. They've been playing extremely well. Eldridge hitting the crap out of the ball. McGonigle has been hitting the crap out of the ball all year long. I understand the impulse to do so. And in the Tigers case, like, they might want to put the best version of themselves on the field because they have a chance for like home field advantage and, being able to actually make a really deep run at this thing. Do you really want to pin your hopes on a rookie when you're in that position? I'm a little bit skeptical that they would actually do that. So is it possible? Yes. I think it would be really exciting if they did that, but I just, with those types of guys at this stage of their development, I just don't see it happening.
The Tigers are in an oddly dangerous space right now too, where their like 18-game lead got whittled down to 4 or 5 in the loss column. Now they're back up to at 9 in the loss column or 10 or 11. Like, they're pretty safe to be your AL Central champions, I would say. But now that complacency starts to set in a little bit too, if you're like, all right, great, well then the next month doesn't really matter. I guess we can audition Kevin McGonigle, or we can, rest on our laurels. They need to keep the pedal to the metal and keep themselves on top of that fire. Wherever that fire is, they need to find it, because you might be safe now, but October starts a whole new season, and they need to find some way to stay as motivated as they were in the first half, and when their lead came into question over the next month. And maybe that's calling up a guy like McGonigle and throwing a total wild card in there, but in my opinion, it probably comes from the men in the room. And I don't know if the best version of the 2025 Detroit Tigers features a streaking double-A bat who you suddenly have to find reps for all across the diamond. Like, that feels like a weird way to stay motivated and stay hungry, but they're going to have to get creative, because this next month is either going to be garbage time, or it's going to be them sharpening their skills for the most important test yet. Now, would Eldridge and McGonigle, I don't know if they qualify. Baseball America seemed to think they were more likely call-up options than we do. I don't know if they qualify here, but are there any totally pie in the sky options, players you'd love to see come up, but you sort of acknowledge like it's not going to happen? Like, I guess they fit, but any other names where you're like, man, they could make such a fun little ripple in Major League Baseball if some team decided to do this, but it's just not going to happen.
So those are the two names that kind of come to mind. The other one's JJ Weatherholt, because in the Cardinals, they're 2 games below 500, right? So you're not competing for a playoff spot unless like you go on the heater, the September heater to end all heaters. However, he's been really, really good at every level he's played at. Like, literally everyone. Everyone thinks he's ready. It's just the Cardinals are kind of one of those organizations that I don't actually know what their thought process is, because maybe they actually think they could go on a heater, or maybe that in their mind they want to promote their guys when they're ready. They don't really care about the service time stuff. Or with Heimblum coming, to take over, he's going to care about that, and he's not going to want to bring him up until they're absolutely ready and he can get the most service time out of him. I don't have a great read on that. All I know is that JJ Weatherholt hasn't been in the minor leagues very long, but he's been very, very good in the minor leagues. He's already a AAA, so he's hit everywhere. So for me, that's the name where I'm like, I see arguments for both sides with that one. With arms, look, if your arms are really banged up, then you're going to put them on your opening day rotation anyway. Like J.R. Ritchie is an example for the Braves. Mm-hmm. The Braves are just going to have like most of their rotation hurt on opening day anyway, so they might need to give him a chance. Look, give him a few starts in September, give him some off-season homework, and then put him on your opening day rotation. But in Weatherholt's case, the picture's a little bit murkier for me, with position players particularly, but he's been very good.
Yeah, Richie is a great call. Again, the Braves, it's, we're looking at what are these teams' motivations. Is it someone who you need on your big league roster next year? Do you need a spark down the stretch? Do you just need to give someone a showcase? Need an audition? Richie's an example of like, we just might not survive the next month unless we have additional arms. Like Eric Fetty was here, so why shouldn't Richie be here using the end of his 2025 bullets at the major league level, getting reps in, preparing himself, toughening his skin for next year when he's probably going to be called upon. That's a great shout by you, but it's not a great shout for some folks in the minor leagues, because we've got some big names who are still underperforming, as well as some huge ones who are hot. So we're going to close the show as we always do with risers and fallers from the last week of action. And Eric, it's your job to fill me in on what happened, because again, I was tanning for 8 days, just getting the burn in, peeling skin. I don't want to talk about it. So who's hot and who's not at the minor league level right now?
Thinking of you just completely slathered in suntan.
My whole 8 days. Yeah, my whole 8 days just on the beach. I throw the beach chair away. I lie in direct sunlight, sand on my back. Just getting tattooed by the darkness.
Too good. We'll start with risers first, because we always want to kind of start on the positive note. Charlie Condon's a bat that I loved in that draft class. I just thought he was the best power bat in the class by a mile, and I would have picked him first overall. That's not a shade to Travis Bazzana. I just think that in terms of pure upside, you couldn't do much better than Condon. But he didn't start the season off particularly well. Had a wrist injury and then was really kind of slow to get started, but now he's kind of gotten a little bit warmer, and then he got promoted to Double-A, and all of a sudden he's hitting the crap out of the ball. Last week was no different. 1105 OPS, 7 for 19, 4 home runs, 8 RBIs, about as many walks as strikeouts, even stole a base, which is pretty funny to me because he's not exactly a guy who's known to be a speedster by any stretch of the imagination. Again, this is a guy that is going to make a lot of noise in the minor leagues, and if he was playing for another organization other than the Rockies, then we would probably care a lot more about him, but he's been very, very good. We also have Karson Milbrandt, Had a pretty big. He's kind of been a sneaky pitching prospect for me. In that, like, no one really talks about it, but I think he's kind of on that fringe conversation as like one of the better starters in the minor leagues. He's just at a low level and he hasn't quite got that press yet. He had his hands full. He had go against that Brewers affiliate that had Jesus Mate, Luis Pena, like Adam Fisher, just like a nightmare scenario for a low minors starter to go against.
Yeah.
5 innings, 1 hit to Pena, 10 strikeouts. That's pretty impressive for any starting pitcher to do, let alone one who's having to go against that lineup in that situation. Was really, really good. Did walk up a batter, but that's completely fine. And the other one, I hate saying nice things about. This is the second guy, Phillies guy, I've had to say nice things about. Aidan Miller was very, very good. He's had a couple periods of struggles this year, but lately he's been very good. And last week he was insane. He went 12 for 23, hit a couple home runs, drove in 7 runs, stole a couple bases, 5 doubles, just was doing it all. This is a guy who's frankly going to annoy me for the next decade being in a Phillies uniform. Unless Dombrowski trades him away, please do so. I would be greatly appreciative, Dave, because he's one of those guys, talent-wise, he's going to be a problem.
Justin Crawford hitting 328 at AAA Lehigh Valley this year too. Like, why can't we see him with the big league Phillies?
He's very fast.
Yeah.
I'll say I don't know how much of an impact he'll have beyond that, but he's very fast and he's fun to watch when he gets underway.
Yeah, another hey, I got this one weird trick that can help me win the NL East though. So maybe we'll see him as well. What about the guys on the struggle bus? And there's some notable names here, including one Dodger who often gets asked about in this chat, who again just a tough week, but had a tough week.
Well, it's a tough week, but it's also kind of indicative of a problem that we don't have a lot of information on. He missed time with an unspecified injury, and the best information I've been able to find is a lower body injury. Someone hinted at a knee, but again, these aren't sources that I can trust enough to say that. But he missed time with an injury, and again, this is a guy that I love the tool set. I think he's going to be very, very good, but I think he's going to move a little slower than we initially thought. Especially since the production has been kind of the actual production has been a little bit lower than we thought it was going to be this year. And he hasn't had a hit since he's come back. And this is not this is a few games now. It's not in his first 2 games back, he was rusty. He hasn't he has multiple games under his belt now where he hasn't been able to do much. So I worry a little bit that maybe there's an underlying injury issue that he's kind of playing through just to get through the season. We'll see what happens. We just don't have enough information for me to draw any conclusions beyond that. Luis Pena, he had 2 hits last week only. One of them was off of Milbrandt. I love the hit tool here. He's an absolute nightmare on the base pass. He just causes absolute havoc. I think he's stolen 30, 40 bases this year, possibly more than that. The count keeps going up every time I look. I'm not worried about him in the slightest, but it wasn't a great week for him last week. Again, what the Brewers have going on right now, top to bottom, there's a lot of good things happening in Milwaukee, and you guys should be excited. The last name is Trey Yesavage. We haven't talked about much on this podcast. Again, a really good pitching prospect, but one that kind of gets overshadowed by some of the bigger names, the ones that got picked a lot higher, or play for organizations that have bigger markets and better marketing. But again, 145 strikeouts in 87 innings this year is kind of insane, and he really did earn that promotion to AAA, and he could have been in kind of this September call-up discussion as well, because the Blue Jays have some things to play for, and they would like to have some more pitching depth. But first 2 starts in AAA, not so hot. Didn't escape the second inning in his first start, and his next outing, again, was a relatively short one, gave up a lot of runs, walking a lot of guys, which is kind of atypical for him. So just not the greatest week. You wonder a little bit if the command was dipping because he kind of knew he might have been playing for an opportunity in the big leagues, and that kind of got to him a little bit. It's atypical enough for me to not necessarily kill him for it, but at the same time, it's kind of hard to argue that if he hasn't been pitching well at the end of August, maybe you shouldn't bring him up in September.
Valid, I would say, almost inarguable. But if you would like to argue, we always welcome comments. We welcome questions in the Discord. We welcome tweets. Eric, not on Twitter anymore, right? Please don't be.
Yeah, only Blue Sky. You can yell at me there, though. I'm perfectly fine with that.
Yeah, I gotta check my Blue Sky again. Just kidding. I'm always on Blue Sky. I'm a good boy. But we appreciate comments, and we hope you bring them. We'd love to see you again next week, noon Eastern, here on the Prospect Show. Coming off a Monday holiday, what better time than after Labor Day to do a labor manipulation show on the Prospect Show about who didn't get called up on September 1st. But we appreciate everybody joining us. Subscribe to the Moonshot. And if you aren't subscribed yet, you should be. Read us on the Baseball Insiders feed on fansided.com/baseball-insiders. Eric's supplementary column is always there, and it's on September call-ups today. So go check that out on fansided.com/baseball-insiders. Hit the join button for more fun in the Discord. That's how you get your link. Sign up, become a member of the Baseball Insiders, and join us again here tomorrow, 3 o'clock Eastern, for Robert Murray's return to the show and my return to the show with Robert Murray. We haven't done one in 2 weeks. Kind of weird. And this is the only place you can find that, either on the Baseball Insiders YouTube channel or on your favorite podcast platform afterwards. For Eric Cole, I'm Adam Weinrib, but we will see you again next week.